fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Uncharted Media Podcast. This is episode number 40, and we have a very packed show. Josh, how you doing tonight, first off?
I'm chilling like a villain, man. I moved into my new apartment this past weekend, so this will be the first show in the new apartment. But yeah, man, I've been chilling today. I felt good enough to go to training and actually was able to go 100%. So
in terms of overall connection, you sound a lot better.
Yeah, I've got my own Wi-Fi, and it seemed so. Fun fact: they gave me the option. They're like, "Hey, for no price difference, do you want to have just like a regular connection? There's nothing wrong with it. It's just regular. Or do you want the 5G option?" And I was like, I wonder. I was like, "And you say there's no price difference?" No. All right, well, that's an easy choice for me.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm rocking that 5G Wi-Fi right now.
Fantastic. Well, we've got a buttload of news and a fantastic discussion today where Josh and I will be ranking the cinematic Spider-Man movies that have come out so far. So the Tobey Maguire, the Andrew Garfield, the Tom Holland ones, and Spider-Verse. We will include Spider-Verse for this ranking. And I can already guess ahead of time that Josh and I are going to have drastically different rankings of these movies. I'm super excited to talk about that. Super excited to talk about our movie news. But before we get into that, I kind of want to go over something real quick. This past weekend, I saw Toy Story 4, and I put up the review on the main channel of this. Without delving too deep into spoilers, I would just sum it up as this. Toy Story 3 did end the franchise perfectly. This movie does not need to exist. That being said, I'm really, really happy that it does.
Yeah, well, that's good. I mean, from everything that I heard, everyone said it was really good. I heard somebody say that it was the weakest of the four, but it is by far that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, it still holds up to the level of all of them. It's just
I'll need to see it a few more times, but I actually put it as my second favorite in the series behind the first one.
Okay.
But again, it could all just depend on the day. They're all fantastic. My only real gripe is that if you go into the movie wanting the original crew, like Buzz, Jesse, RC, Rex, the Potato Heads, you're going to kind of miss out. It's very much a Woody-focused movie, which is great, as well as introducing some great new characters. But if you go in for the old characters, you might be a little disappointed. It would be a bigger deal had the new characters not been fantastic. Key and Peele, as to be expected, were great. But the real show stealer for me was, big shock here, Keanu Reeves as Duke Kaboom. This man was amazing. And as soon as the movie ended, I leaned over to Heather and was like, I'm going to need a Duke Kaboom toy of some kind.
Well, that's good, man. I mean, I saw somewhere, I think it was Time Magazine, is trying to make Keanu Reeves the man of the year.
Flip that. Fans are trying to convince Time to make him man of the year.
Got it. Okay. Well, either way, that's awesome because he totally deserves it at this point.
Also, there's stuff in the credits like they did with Toy Story 2 with the bloopers and stuff of like just fun stuff for the audience. So I'd say go just for that because they poke fun at Keanu for something.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and I wasn't expecting it at all. So when it happens, of Ducky and Bunny telling some story, and something happens, and I'm just like, oh yeah, that's a thing that Keanu is known for. Great job, guys.
Interesting. Okay.
So yeah, I'd highly recommend Toy Story 4. That's assuming you're not seeing Avengers Endgame again. Segue. So, Avengers Endgame is less than $40 million away from breaking Avatar's record for the highest grossing film of all time. It's already beat it domestically, but it hasn't beaten it internationally. It's not going to catch up to the number one movie domestically. That's Force Awakens with over $1 billion just in the US. So, Avengers is trying one last ditch effort, basically. People are calling it a re-release, but that's not entirely true because the movie hasn't been out of theaters to be re-released in, or People are also saying it's an extended cut of Endgame, which is also not true. So what's happening is Marvel is introducing a new version or a new viewing experience. That's what I'll call it, a new viewing experience opportunity for Endgame of the movie. If you see after the 28th of June, you will get a introduction by the Russo brothers, more or less introducing the film. You'll get it just how it was, no deleted scenes or anything. Then when the movie's done, you'll get a special deleted scene, which the speculation right now is it's a scene involving the Hulk. There supposedly is going to be a tribute video of some kind, probably to Stan Lee, who passed away in November, and then some other quote-unquote surprises. So probably a gag reel of some kind, some form of bloopers, or maybe a look back at the franchise. And then lastly, there's a special sneak peek at Far From Home, which comes out just a couple days later. This is blatantly an attempt to try and pass Avatar as the number one movie of all time. That being said, if you're this close, go for it, Endgame.
I mean, what is it? Like you said, 40 million and that's it?
Yeah.
Easy.
I don't know. I don't know if there's enough content here that's going to entice people to go back for that extra 40 million. That being said, I will absolutely try my best to get to the theater one more time to see this, if nothing else, just to knock Avatar off its perch, because I hate that movie.
Well, exactly. And I think that's the big thing is that, honestly, Avatar doesn't deserve to be where it is. And, let's knock it out of the perch, I guess. I mean, at the same time, like, what was it? I think Dark Phoenix is being pulled, so you got to fill that spot with something, right?
Far From Home, probably.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I would assume, yeah, maybe, I guess. My thought process was pull Dark Phoenix, put in more, like another week or maybe another month of Endgame, and then add Far From Home on top of it.
I think it's still going to be a bit of a challenge for them to beat Avatar, and even if they do, it'll be just barely. But either way, we cannot take away from the accomplishment and the year that Endgame has had. We're definitely going to be off on our box office predictions. There's no way Lion King beats Endgame. Nothing's even getting close. There's also some speculation going around that one of the fun things that'll be at the end of Endgame is his name Lewis from Ant-Man?
Oh, are you talking? Yeah. The guy that does like the recaps?
Yeah, there's talk that he will recap the entire MCU.
Oh, no. That actually would be... I have mixed feelings about that, but, I mean, I would prefer not to have to pay...
You would totally go to the theater just to see Lewis recap all of the MCU.
I mean, I guess, sure.
And then I've also heard, or this may be just an idea that someone pitched, that when he gets the Incredible Hulk, he's just like, nah, and just skips over it entirely.
Yes.
Because Incredible Hulk, they only kind of have the rights to.
Yeah.
Because it's a Universal movie, technically. It's super weird, legally speaking.
Yeah, it totally is.
But yeah, Endgame, it's going to be a bit of a challenge, but I just love it because of all the memes of just like, Avatar's never beat me. Yes, it has. Well, it's never beat me twice.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. It deserves... It's such a way better movie than Avatar, and deserves to be at that spot.
Oh, absolutely. So last week we reported that, well, we delivered in the news. It wasn't our thing to be like, we reported it first. We talked about that there was some Spider-Man announcement that came out with this mysterious countdown starting at 4, then 3, 2, 1, to a big reveal. I'm not gonna lie, I was more than a little disappointed. Not that the news itself is disappointing, but they hyped it up so much and it kind of ends up being nothing. So what the reveal and the countdown was leading up to is J.J. Abrams, the guy behind Force Awakens, Rise of Skywalker, the Star Trek movies, at least the first two of the newer timeline, Super 8, super well-known guy. He and his son, Henry Abrams, are writing a Spider-Man limited series for Marvel, and they're introducing a new villain and everything. It's a limited run, only like 6 issues. Had this just been announced on its own, just like on a random Friday of, hey guys, J.J. Abrams, the director of 2 Star Wars movies, he and his son, who looks like a mini-me version of J.J. Abrams, it's kind of freaky, they're writing a Spider-Man comic. I think I'd be super excited for that. I don't think the countdown helped this at all, though, because it built up in fans' minds something bigger than it actually was.
Yeah, I agree, and it's kind of in my opinion maybe a little disappointing that it's a comic thing with J.J. Abrams. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, I can get on board.
Like, JJ's a really good storyteller, and I think it's I'm more just like, that's a cool thing that you and your son can share together, that, hey, you wrote a Spider-Man comic together. But
yeah.
I have so many questions now of, okay, if you aren't intending to do anything, like you started with the 4 and led people to think maybe you're doing Spider-Man 4 with Tobey Maguire as a comic or something Fantastic Four related. Why did you start the countdown with 4 then? Did your intern or something just forget to start the countdown at 5 a day earlier? Why did you start a countdown at 4?
Yeah, that's such an awkward number to start at.
And just, I don't know. If it was a thing that got announced on its own, I think it would be a really cool announcement. But the general consensus that I saw online was when this got announced, everyone was like, oh, okay. Just nothingness.
And I think that was about how our reaction is. I mean, I'm excited to see what J.J. Abrams will bring to a comic book. It'll be interesting to say the least, and I'm interested to see what kind of new villain they're going to do. I just hope it's not an Arkham Knight situation where they're like, we got a new villain, when it's really not a new villain.
Oh man, I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah.
Every once in a while that can work, but not in the case of Arkham Knight, especially. But now I'm worried that that's going to happen.
I think the big thing is J.J. Abrams is creative enough to not let that happen.
Yeah, so, and if nothing else, it's just a limited run. It's only 6 issues, starting in September, I believe. I'm more excited for Phantasm, but that's a whole side tangent in the world of Batman.
Yeah.
But speaking of Batman, we have some news, reportedly, from the Matt Reeves standalone Batman movie, which has more or less kind of been quiet on the home front. But we may have some good news, and that is that composer Michael Giacchino may be the one doing the music for the Batman, which offhandedly, when I first thought about this, I was like, that's a weird pick because Giacchino has a lot of different styles, but more or less it's typically a lot of when I first heard his name, I think of his music as more upbeat and fun. I was first introduced to the music of Michael Giacchino through the first Incredibles movie in 2003, 2004. He did the music for The Incredibles, but he also did the music for Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, Incredibles 2.
I think we talked about Star Trek and the two, both of the new Spider-Man films as well.
Yeah, both Spider-Man movies. So the more I thought about it, I was like, yeah, he's actually got quite a bit of range. He's really good. Maybe I'm just too attached to the Hans Zimmer music from the Dark Knight trilogy, or even Danny Elfman's score. But I don't know. I just didn't think Michael Giacchino. That being said, sure, I love the Spider-Man soundtrack, the Spider-Man Homecoming soundtrack. He did a really good cover of the Spider-Man theme. I like the Star Trek music a lot. I'm just curious to see what he's going to bring to the table for this.
Well, and to be fair, like, a part of me wouldn't mind a quote-unquote more upbeat Batman score. You know what I mean? Like, maybe not like bouncy and fun like The Incredibles, but...
Or like Danny Elfman.
Yeah, not to that extreme, but definitely a little bit something better than the one we got in the Zack Snyder films. And as much as I love them, maybe a little bit more, like, more fun than the Dark Knight trilogy.
maybe this is just me as a fan saying this because I will always scream this movie's praises, but musically, I kind of want him to take inspiration from Mask of the Phantasm.
I can see that.
Because Mask of the Phantasm, I think, has phenomenal music for a Batman movie.
What's a non-comic book film that you could see them using that style? So I'm thinking maybe
for music?
Yeah, that's a good one. I don't know, man. I think it'll bring a different approach.
I don't want something super intense. Like
yeah.
Stuff for Batman v Superman was super intense, like very bass heavy and doom. I want something like slower and methodical, maybe more string based.
Yeah, very, very detective like.
Yes, analytical music. Like
exactly, but like
not fully like discombobulate from Sherlock Holmes, but something kind of akin to that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I can hear it now of like spikes of like I can hear the music in my head of him swing, like if they do have him like grappling through the city, of just the like just like something more fun than what we got in the Snyder films to really differentiate it from Ben Affleck's Batman outside of the look and the fact that Robert Pattinson is playing him.
One thing I'm actually, now that I think about it, what Michael Giacchino really strives and excels at is reworking classic themes of, you got the original Star Trek theme several times in the new Star Trek trilogy. He does a great version of the Spider-Man theme for Spider-Man Homecoming, which needs to be even more in Far From Home. Maybe he can do a reworked or a different interpretation of Danny Elfman's classic Batman theme.
Or even the Batman animated.
Oh gosh, if they played the Batman animated series music, oh, I'm in. Just done. Game over. Best Batman movie ever.
Oh, absolutely. I could, and you know what? Given his track record, I could totally see him doing that.
Yep. Kevin Conroy
and
cameos
really, like,
in
that's
some way.
Almost like that's almost exactly the kind of tone they might need to go with this.
Now that you say it, musically, that fits his style really well, actually.
Yeah. And just the kind of Batman I feel like Robert is going to play, I feel like that would work really well.
Yeah, definitely. So either last week or the week before, I can't remember which, we talked about Onward, and that really didn't make us super excited. We actually have our next Pixar one very, very quickly after that, with Soul coming June 19th, 2020. And immediately I'm more interested in this one.
Well, this has like a because I knew nothing about it, so I kind of like did a quick little research earlier today. This has like the same kind of feel and appeal that what was it called? The movie about emotions.
Inside Out.
Inside Out. It has the same feel and appeal as that, as far as the description goes.
Yeah, it's like existential, but isn't it also somewhat space? Like,
yeah, it's
exploring the wonders of the cosmos.
Yeah, it was, and something about like the life's biggest questions or something. And honestly, that dude, if Pixar can keep doing that kind of stuff, because Inside Out was incredible and extremely smart. So like, I by all means, man, go that direction. But it's just interesting to see the two concepts coming out right now that are from Pixar in what is it, Onward or and Soul. Like they're just two very big projects, but one feels really lame and the other feels really interesting.
Yeah, keep in mind we haven't seen a trailer for it yet. The biggest takeaway for me, honestly, is how quickly this is coming out after Onward.
Yes.
Also, this is really soon. It's like a year away.
Yeah, it almost feels like Damage Control. But at the same time, I mean, why not? Like, if you feel like you have a really good product that's about to come out, like, yeah, like, market that stuff.
Yeah, we've had years where more than one Pixar movie came out. Wasn't it like last year or 2 years ago, The Incredibles 2 and Good Dinosaur, or Good Dinosaur came out the same year as something else, like Good Dinosaur and Finding Dory.
Yeah, I think it was Good Dinosaur and Finding Dory was like a month or a couple months later. Yeah,
Yeah, it
because
used to be like one Pixar movie every couple of years, but now it's like at least one, maybe two a year.
yes,
So
which
long as the
is
quality doesn't dip, which at times it does, thankfully it doesn't for Toy Story 4. So long as the creativity and the storytelling is still there, totally fine.
yeah, I agree, and I think the big thing is like Good Dinosaur wasn't great,
No, it's
but
bad.
at the same but in the same at the same time, it's not terrible. It's just Pixar has this aura around it that it only puts out quality products, and then it puts out something like Good
And
Dinosaur,
Cars.
and it's so
I will say
I don't
this
know.
for Good Dinosaur. It's one of the most visually stunning animated movies that Pixar has done.
Yes, it is quite stunning, and I there are times where I do enjoy the dynamic of the dinosaur and the crazy like caveman child. There's some times that I enjoy that dynamic. It's I can see where they were trying to go with it.
Fair enough. In terms of staying creative and just maintaining that story aspect, we hope the same can extend to Blumhouse, who will now be making officially the sequel to last year's runaway hit remake of Halloween. Now, it more or less is confirmed at this point because we kind of figured it would be. Last week we talked about how Jason Blum was meeting with Jamie Lee Curtis. Now it seems official. Halloween 2 is coming next Halloween season, with them actually starting to film later this year, with both Jamie Lee Curtis and director David Gordon Green expected to return. Josh, does this get you excited, or are you kind of just like, I was fine with it ending where it was?
No, I'm down, man. I think with them building that was I saw the movie while I was getting a tattoo, so I don't remember quite a lot of it, but they were setting up Jamie Lee Curtis's like granddaughter to kind
Yep.
of be the next
Allison.
heroine. Yeah. So I mean, this one could easily just start with her being like, "Hey, like this is what I've gone through. I trained your mother and all this stuff. Now it's your turn because obviously he's back."
Yeah, they teased it obviously in the end credits where you still hear Michael Myers breathing or just a type
Yeah.
thing. Now, there's some speculation that with like Allison clinging to Michael Myers' knife desperately at the end, it was very similar to Jamie at the end of Halloween 4 after she killed her mother. Halloween, more than any other franchise, maybe this is just because of my emotional attachment to it, has this long history of each individual movie, besides the original, having massive rewrites and changes to the story. So I wouldn't be surprised if this has already been worked and reworked several times. In the original writing process for the 2018 one, writer Danny McBride, which is still weird for me to say that the dude from Tropic Thunder helped write Halloween. They actually already had the story for the sequel mapped out. So I think they know where they want to go. And the nice thing about Halloween or just horror movies in general is they're cheap and they can be filmed fast. So this
Yeah.
feasibly, it's absolutely possible to come out Halloween next year.
Yeah. Well, and so I think I made this point a couple weeks ago. This phase of not phase this new wave of comedians coming in to write horror films makes more sense to me than I think it probably should. But it doesn't surprise me that Danny McBride would already have a sequel mapped out. Like because in comedy you don't just tell the joke. You tell the joke and set up for the next four jokes because that's how you keep an audience in, right? Is you set things up and then you have to deliver on them. So and you're always thinking ahead. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if he is the main writer, has this story and even a potential two more lined up, just because you want to take your main character on a journey. So you can't necessarily only do that in one movie.
Now, I'll be very curious to see what direction they go for two. Obviously, it's going to be Michael Myers coming back. Do you kill Laurie again? I I actually don't think I would mind so much if she dies this time. I would have minded a lot if she died in the first one, but now that we have an established like passing of the baton to Allison, I think I'd be more okay with
Mm-hmm.
her dying. But I would also be more okay with her sticking around as the new Loomis type character.
I agree. I think the big thing would be is if they do kill her in this one, it's gotta be like a
Going out
bare
in a
enough
blaze of
either
glory.
Blaze of Glory or Michael actually gets the jump on her.
Oh, you mean like stabbing her in the back and dropping her off a mental hospital?
No. I mean like
Or
she
dying in a
think
car
like
crash off screen?
listen. None of that happened. But I
Also,
know like
side note, real quick, they're going to name this one Halloween 2, which is super confusing. One, because we've already had not one, but two Halloween 2s in the franchise. But also, chronologically speaking, in this new timeline they've established, this is Halloween 3.
it is. Oh, that's
Because you
almost
have
a
the
joke
original John
though.
Carpenter one, the 2018 one, which is technically called Halloween, but it's Halloween 2 in terms of their timeline. So this one would be Halloween 3 in terms of the timeline, but they're going to call it Halloween 2.
Yeah, why not?
This franchise, man.
I know. I love it to death, but I can totally see a moment where Lori thinks she's beat him and he like stabs through a door or something. Something like really like like Blaze of Glory or Michael finally gets the jump on her or something like in a way that makes sense and not him throwing her off the top of a mental hospital. Anyway, but
Yeah,
yeah.
more or less. I kind of also want to move away from the Strode family. We've had enough of Michael and Strodes.
Yeah. I almost I mean, I know we've had this before, but not really. I really want Michael to become an actual serial killer. Like, go from town to town and just slaughter people and then leave.
I gotta disagree to a sense of it has to be in Haddonfield.
Okay. Well, that's fine, but
yeah, move away from the Strodes and have him just kill the whole town essentially.
yes. Okay, so quick question. This is related, I promise. There was a movie, I don't know if it still is, but there was a movie on Netflix at one time called The Girl in the Photographs. Have you seen or heard about it?
Never heard of it.
Okay, I would look it up. It's a very, very good film. Surprised the crap out of me. But essentially, the movie is about the good guys losing, essentially. But like it's in a way that it may, to use wrestling terms, it makes the serial killers feel stronger. Like it doesn't throughout the movie they show you, oh hey look, like the serial killers are really bad and they're really good at what they do, and because it doesn't make sense in slashers if these killers are good at what they do, then all of a sudden one person gets the jump on them. Like that doesn't necessarily make sense. It's like in a real life situation. So I would love for a Halloween movie to take the route of Michael starts doing his thing and people think they get the jump. They're like, haha, like not in the sense of, oh, we've shot him 45 times in the chest.
I shot him 6 times.
Yeah, exactly. Not in that way, but in the way of like, oh, we're safe. And then he kills all of them and walks off. And that's the end of the movie.
I would actually very much be okay with that because the general audience would hate it.
Exactly. Because
and you're supposed to hate Michael Myers. I remember when the
exactly.
2018 one came out and he kills the kid in the truck. And people are like, that's too far. Don't do that. I'm like, you do realize he's the bad guy, right?
Exactly. Like, I want to hate Michael. Like, please make me hate Michael.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't make him just this bumbling, like, not even bumbling, like this mentally handicapped person that happens to be really strong and loves killing people. Like, don't just, like, have him going after the Strodes after some kind of fixation. Like, if he's going to be a killer, go it all the way. I'm fine with it being art, but take it all, like, go as far as you can with it. He's a murderer, man.
Yeah. Basically, you know who else is a murderer? The Kingsman.
Oh, get out of here.
Now, This one I'm very much on the fence about. Josh, I have a feeling you're a lot more excited about this than I am because this is like your franchise.
I think you're going to be surprised.
Alrighty, so before Josh gets into it, what we're talking about is the Kingsman franchise, based off the comic book. The first two directed by Matthew Vaughn, who also did X-Men First Class, really good. We're getting a prequel to the Kingsman called The King's Man. Not a whole lot of information coming out. I'm actually extremely worried about this because it's got a February 2020 release date. That is so soon, and we only have this logo.
Yeah. I'm okay with a prequel. I think it's kind of cool. I'm curious as to how far back we're going to go.
Yeah, I've also wondered that because we don't really have that information out yet, but also the title suggests it's just going to be one person, not a grouping of Kingsmen.
Yeah, so but also they kind of already established the Kingsman's backstory in the first movie. They're like, hey, like during World War II, it's like either World War I or II. All these rich people, you know, all their heirs died, so they had nobody to leave their money to, so they created the Kingsmen, right? So that means, technically speaking, you can only go back to World War I or II.
Well, since Matthew Vaughn knows a thing or two about retconning franchises past.
I mean, yeah, I know, but I would like. I'm not a big fan of retconning. Like, I really feel that. Oh, hey, like this is what has happened in the story so far. Yeah, it's not ideal, but let's find a creative way to work around it.
I think, in all honesty, and I'm saying this full transparency, I think this is the last one in the series.
I agree. I mean, 2 was a little bit of a stretch. There's some great moments in 2, but it's definitely not as good as 1.
Oh no, not by any stretch. It's basically just there to have Elton John cameos, just so Taron Egerton can later be Elton John in a movie.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, I think the main thing that I do enjoy about the Kingsman movies is the style in which they are shot and the style that all the action is done. I think they're always the camera work is always very, very well done. The music is always well done, and the characters are interesting enough.
Yeah, I always kind of think they're like if Edgar Wright did a James Bond movie.
Yeah, like they are a unique spy film, and I appreciate for that them.
But
for
yeah,
that.
I don't know if I see this franchise continuing past this one. Really?
No, I agree. It's kind of lost its steam, and I think it's time for Terrence Egerton to move on to other things.
Yeah, Matthew Vaughn could move on to Superman. There was actually talk about that, but that's a issue for another day.
Yeah.
Talk about a franchise that also has lost a lot of steam. The Paranormal Activity franchise. We are now getting a 7th installment in this franchise. Oh boy. I'll be perfectly honest. I have not actually seen any of these.
I have seen like a couple. I've never been that impressed. You know me, I'm very, very picky about my found footage films.
Some found footage you really like. You're real high on both Blair Witch movies.
Maybe not the first one. Definitely the newest one.
Really? I thought it was you like both of them.
Nah, just that. Really, I was more. The first one was okay. I couldn't, but I didn't love it. But definitely the most recent one. And Chronicle is incredible as well.
Yes, that's also very good. Back when Josh Trank had a career.
Yeah, exactly. But like that's the point, though. Is like found footage film is very hard to do, and it's honestly really hard for me to get behind one. Because at the end of the day, you have to have a reason why all this stuff is A, being filmed, and B, who's watching it.
Yeah, case in point, The Visit. It was explained well why it's a found footage movie.
Exactly. I completely forgot about The Visit. Yeah.
Visit's great.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And it's even weirder that it's an M. Night Shyamalan movie. But the point being is you've got to have a reason that people are filming. You've got to have a reason why we as an audience are watching it. Like for Chronicle, like you figure it out at the end about why we're seeing all this stuff, but like, and what is it? Blair Witch makes sense because they're making a documentary, and so, but the Paranormal Activity ones were always just like, we're a family, or we're a group of people that happen to have cameras around, and we're gonna for some reason pop in the webcam cameras and then pop in the security cameras. Like it doesn't make sense at all. And like who's watching this? Who put all this footage together?
Yeah, I'm actually gonna say something possibly surprising here. I have a little bit of hope for this movie, actually. I'm cautiously optimistic for the sole reason that for a while there, for a long stretch of time, we had like a Paranormal Activity movie a year. Like once that first one did gangbangers, and it was just like what, $300,000 budget, and it made like 50 million,
Yeah,
and it was just
it was
huge.
ridiculous.
Um,
Yeah,
they made like one a year. Then we haven't had one in quite a few years. So I think it was kind of them taking a step back and going, okay, diminishing returns each time.
yeah,
What do we need to do to fix this?
yeah. So I mean, let's that's fine. I'll give you that. Like, it definitely comes across as a company that's like, oh, okay, guys, hold on, let's chill, let's take a step back a little bit. And we both know that doesn't happen often in the movie industry. So let's okay. You know what? I think you just gave me a little hope for the movie.
Yeah.
I don't
The
I
last one
don't
was
want to
what?
sit here and
Paranormal
say that
Activity,
I
the
think it's going
marked
to be good,
ones?
but
I think that was 2015.
yeah, it's been a bit.
It's been a bit. I think they've taken a step back, or like, okay, clearly things are not going too well. How do we fix this?
Well, and to think of, to put in perspective, that's was 2015 or whatever. That's like 4 years. We now have technically a new generation of horror fans. So, I mean, I'm assuming that you've got a bunch of kids who who are not that familiar or have access to kind of the older films that you and I grew up with, or have sought after. So I mean, Paranormal Activity, I would assume, would be a kind of a quote unquote new name to them.
If anything, I've learned in all the years of movies that no franchise is beyond help, basically, of you can re-spark a franchise at any given time. Case in point, Fast and Furious was kind of just muddling along, and the fourth one happened, and then Fast 5 happened with The Rock, and more or less everything after 5 has been $1 billion movie. So it's never too late in the game to save your franchise, I think.
I agree, but you definitely have to be willing to switch some things up and maybe
absolutely
improve upon some stuff. And you know what? I mean, this will be their chance. Let's see if that's actually something that they end up doing.
Well, somebody that is very studious in taking their notes and seeing what fans want and changing it up when they need to is the MCU. Obviously, spearheaded by the great Kevin Feige. I think when it all is said and done, Kevin Feige will go down in the history books alongside other great creative geniuses like Steven Spielberg and Walt Disney in terms of being the driving force behind one of the greatest universes in history. Now, Kevin Feige is trying to win over even more internet fans by saying that he wants to find a good way to introduce the internet's favorite son, Keanu Reeves, into the MCU. First off, Josh, do you actually believe that Kevin Feige wants to bring in Keanu Reeves, or is this just him playing to his audience?
I personally think it's him playing to his audience because I don't know who Keanu would be in this modern MCU. You know what I mean? Like, I'm trying, and that's saying a lot.
I think of one of two options. Everyone suggests Silver Surfer, but I'm like, maybe. I actually see him as Nova.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, yeah. I could see him as Nova, like maybe an older Nova.
super cocky, um, kind of like a Booster Gold type character.
Okay. Oh,
Because he can do comedy real well. But yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think Kevin Feige, he's just kind of joking along with everyone else. He's just like, yeah, we just look for the right opportunities to include Keanu Reeves in the MCU. We've been planning it for a while. I'm like, as great as it would be to see Keanu Reeves in the MCU, have you actually been planning this out like you've planned everything else? Or are you just making that up to appease your fans?
Here's the thing. I don't want to see him in the MCU because I want him to be busy with something else. And I think you tagged me in it as him as Revan in the Star Wars universe.
Yep.
I feel like that is like now that I've seen that, I can't unsee it, and I really want it to happen.
Although I saw his somebody did the same thing, maybe his Boss Logic, that disguised him as Deathstroke, and he looked so good as that too.
Well, of course. I think Keanu is he's like upper 40s, maybe his close to
he's
his 50s.
In his 50s, man.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, the man doesn't look like he's aged at all.
Oh no,
Second
he hasn't.
Of all, he is literally just now hitting his stride as an actor.
Yeah, he's found his niche basically. So whatever it is, I don't think he's going to be a super physical role because he's going to be preoccupied with John Wick for a while. I think this is that's assuming Kevin Feige playing to his audience and knowing that Keanu Reeves is the most popular thing on the internet right now.
Yeah. But to me, maybe this is just me personally, and we all know that I have always had issues with some of Marvel and Disney's things. That puts if it is just him being like, oh, this is what's popular, let's like put out a message to appease the fans or whatever. To me, that puts a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth. But
let's be honest, that's never been what Kevin Feige's been about.
Exactly. So
he's always played long game, but I think in that situation, it was just a matter of you kind of have to say something. So he just kind of went along with it. It's like if you're in a really awkward interaction, you kind of go with the conversation.
Yeah, but and to be to his credit, the way that he said it, the way he answered, makes it so if it doesn't happen, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, very, very true. I think he's going to be more preoccupied with the Fox stuff anyway.
Yeah, and all this, if the multiverse is in fact coming, then yes.
Which, quick side tangent before we get into our main discussion, which of course relates to Spider-Man before Far From Home. I told Heather coming out of Endgame, because I cheered my head off when, spoiler alert, Captain America wielded Mjolnir. That's the loudest I've ever cheered in a theater since Kylo and Rey teamed up in Last Jedi. It's the loudest I've cheered in a theater, period. And I was just like, that'll never be topped. I'll never cheer louder than that. And then over the past couple of days, I was like, let me reevaluate that. If these two things had ever happened in a movie, first, if the Sinister Six ever got together to fight Spider-Man, I would cheer so loud. But two, and Heather's like, yeah, I can definitely see that happening, is if like the end credits from Far From Home is something about Peter's like, well, it's too bad that multiverse thing ended up not being the case. That would have been kind of cool to see another version of me. And then we pan up to a news building and you just hear, what's this multiverse? And out comes J.K. Simmons, J. Jonah Jameson.
I'd be super down with that.
Because I saw a meme of that once, of just like, you say multiverse, and it just shows that J. Jonah coming back. I'm like, that I would cheer louder than ever before.
Yeah. I also, Tom Holland wants to do, with the multiverse in play, wants to bring back Andrew and, oh, jeez. I just blanked on his name. Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire. And, like, actually have, like, an actual, like, scene with all three of them.
That would be cool.
I honestly would be super down with that because all their Spider-Mans are different and unique enough that you could totally kind of work that through.
Oh, absolutely. One more side tangent before we get to our main discussion. Heather and I are going through all the Spider-Man movies to get ready from Far From Home. And I was like, if they do recast J. Jonah, which I'm sure they will, I would love Ice Cube.
That is like an out of left field pick, but
Remember the Jump Street movies?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm just picturing that. Like, Peter, get me some pictures of Spider-Man, or I'll kick your butt. And I'm like, yes. Okay,
Just
yeah,
his
I'm
expression when Channing Tatum finds out the secret in the second one.
Yes.
Ice Cube as J. Jonah, please.
Like, just that snarl. And, like, you don't even have to give him... No, actually, go full-fledged. Give him the stinking mustache. That'd be hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
I'm super down now.
Well, now that we're on the topic of Spider-Man, let's transition into our main discussion today, which is Josh and I giving our own personal rankings from worst to best of the Spider-Man movies that have come out in theaters. So, nothing animated, unfortunately. Just the theatrically released stuff. Well, actually, that does include Into the Spider-Verse. So anything, it has to be theatrically released, so no TV shows. But I promised Josh we'd do a quick discussion about it because it's the only Spider-Man that we both wholeheartedly actually can agree on because we have widely different tastes in our Spider-Man.
Yes.
There's one thing that Josh and I can agree on, though, and that is the best TV show Spider-Man as an honorable mention. Josh, which Spider-Man is that?
You know what? I don't actually know what the I think it's just Spider-Man, and that's the one that Drake voices.
It changed a couple times. The first two seasons were like Ultimate Spider-Man, and then it was like Spider-Man Web Warriors.
Well, because I think
it
they
changed a couple
switched
times, like Justice League and Justice League Unlimited style.
Yeah, but it made sense because it wasn't like they just like randomly switched it. It was once they went Web Warriors when they introduced the multiverse and stuff.
Yes. But yes, it's the Drake Bell voiced Spider-Man.
It's fantastic. It's easily, like, in my opinion, goes up there with Avatar: The Last Airbender is one of my favorite animated shows of all time.
My only complaint with it has nothing to do with the quality of the show. It's just incredibly difficult to find.
Yeah, which, again, I think we said this earlier off mic when we were talking about it. If they can have that on the Disney app, I would buy it only for that, honestly.
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, that is by far our favorite Spider-Man TV series. We did that as an honorable mention. Plus, it's the only thing that Josh and I can actually agree upon. Now, the disagreements, I'm sure. So, Josh, I'll let you open the floor with your number 7. So, what is your least favorite Spider-Man?
You want to go from the bottom and go up to the top?
Yeah, we'll go worst to best. So, What is your least favorite Spider-Man movie that's come out so far at number 7?
Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Wow! I was really anticipating you saying Spider-Man 3 because you are real high on the Amazing Spider-Man movies.
I am, and to be fair, the difficult thing, and I go back and forth on between 3 and as Amazing Spider-Man 2 being my least favorite, but because Amazing Spider-Man 2 has the most accurate costume we've ever had.
I think Homecomings is a little better, but that being said, Amazing Spider-Man 2, in terms of improving the previous suit, absolutely, because Amazing Spider-Man's suit is trash.
Yes,
but exactly. The suit is the best thing about that movie.
Exactly, but then when I was thinking about all this stuff, and I was trying to think of what I enjoyed about the movie, I was like, all right, cool, the suit.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, that's disappointing. So, yeah. Whereas,
and it's not number coherent 6 at all.
Yeah. Now, don't hear me wrong. Number 6 is definitely a Spider-Man 3. But there's a lot more to enjoy and appreciate and be entertained by in 3 than there is Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yes, 3 is more cohesive, but we'll get to that one next. Amazing Spider-Man 2 by far is my number 7, and I think it's the biggest gap in terms of quality on this list. because I think Amazing Spider-Man 2 is just awful. I remember even walking out of the theater and everyone else was like, that was pretty good. And me just going, I don't know. And then the more I watch it, the more mad I get because there's just so many different things that it was just Sony desperately trying to throw a universe together real quick. The secret of Peter Parker's parents. I was like, wasn't that in the last movie? But also that side tangent goes nowhere except for a deleted scene in which case you find out that Peter's parents are still alive and he has a confrontation with his dad in the graveyard. But then you have all these side characters that you either blow through completely, waste them because you misunderstand them, looking at you, Paul Giamatti, as Rhino.
First of all, I was super excited about Paul Giamatti as Rhino.
Yeah,
up until he
he's
showed
not even
up.
in it.
Yeah, up until the point he showed up, like legitimately.
I am the Rhino.
Because Paul Giamatti is awesome.
Yeah, and his Sideways co-star, Thomas Hayden Church, who we'll talk about later, was great as Sandman. So, but then also as a Spider-Man fan, like a diehard Spider-Man fan, I caught a lot more than others of just certain things that I was like, wait, this is obviously sequel bait because you have Black Cat, Alistair Smythe, who creates the Spider Slayers. It's like, you just wasted like 3 movies worth of potential here. Then the shoehorning in of the Sinister Six stuff with literally a dude walking past a tank with things in them. And then the one that I know I've talked ad nauseum about that still to this day frustrates me of how much they botched it was the death of Gwen Stacy. Because there was no emotional stakes. They telegraphed it throughout the whole movie that she was going to die. And then how they did it, it was in the comic, it's very clear Peter's responsible for her death by catching her so quickly. This one, it was just kind of, it wasn't clear of, was it because of her neck? Did she smack her head on the ground? What happened here?
The one thing was clear was that he was too late.
Yes, now, and it was blatantly obvious with the webbing hand. I'm like, oh, good grief.
Yes. I will say, now that I'm thinking about it, I kind of did enjoy Jamie Foxx's Electro.
Get out.
Not the dubstep, not at all the dubstep, but the design I really enjoyed.
The design it was very accurate to the comic, which is the ultimate.
Yes.
I still prefer the green and yellow, but that's me being biased in my old schoolness. As a performance, I thought it was one of the worst supervillain performances in a comic book movie I've ever seen.
Really?
It was on par with Jim Carrey's Riddler.
Okay, fair enough. I'll give you that.
He is Jim Carrey's Riddler. He talks to himself in the mirror. He's a little just weird, kooky guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I know people brought it up before, but it's weird that once he becomes Electro, his teeth get fixed.
Yeah, no, that's weird as well. I will say, I think if we would have spent more time with him as an actual villain, like when the Goblin starts using him and he goes
I haven't even brought up the Goblin yet.
Yeah, no, I don't want to talk about the Goblin. I don't want to talk about it. I want to move on to 6.
That's fair because I have a long diatribe about how much you botched the Goblin.
Whatever that was does not deserve to be talked about.
Yeah. That was just bad. But you're talking about Electro?
Yeah, I like him going in and out of electric sockets and like stuff like that. I thought that was interesting. It could have been really, really cool, and you could have done some really cool stuff with it if he was the only villain.
I really hate this movie, and like you said, the suit is great, and that's by and large the best thing about it. The only good thing about it. But as you were talking about Electro, there is one part in the movie that I was like, "That's clever. I like that." It's when Harry, not Goblin yet, Harry is teaming up with Electro and they're interrogating some guy. And they keep killing him, and then Electro resuscitates him using more or less a defibrillator, like himself as a defibrillator. I'm like,
yeah,
that's actually really clever.
Yeah. The movie was, and I think you can kind of tell from that some of the writing was left over from the first one, because I do really appreciate the first one. We'll get to that, but there is some smart, subtle things that they did do well, but it's by and large a mess.
Oh, it's absolutely a mess. So much so that it just killed that iteration. But speaking
Yes.
of killing iterations, I think we both said it earlier. Our number 6 worst is Spider-Man 3, which I just watched this yesterday. It's actually not nearly as bad as people make it out to be. If you cut it off at the halfway point, it's just like the rest of them. It's the problem
Yeah.
of when you introduce the Venom symbiote. Actually,
Yes.
even the Venom symbiote is not difficult. So there's 2 steps that would immediately fix this movie. Of 1, take out Topher Grace wholesale, not even in the movie, and the Venom symbiote goes to Harry instead.
Yeah.
Immediately
Absolutely.
fixes like almost all the problems of the movie.
Absolutely. And can we get rid of the dancing scene?
No. As much as I physically cannot bring myself to watch it, it's been explained to me, and I'm actually completely agree, of Peter's not doing this to come across as cool. He's doing this because he thinks this is what cool people do, because he's never been a cool person before.
Oh, I mean, yeah. But
it's supposed to be cringy.
I mean, I guess. It's just...
But also, rewatching it, I hate like every character in this. Mary Jane is just awful. She literally says in the movie, "This isn't about you. This is about me."
Yes.
And that's her whole mantra through most of the trilogy, but especially this one of Peter's going through a lot of stuff, and all she cares about is, I lost my role in the play because, frankly, I wasn't very good at it.
Yes.
That being said, for all my big issues with the movie, which is many, not as many as Spider-Man 2, I can almost forgive a lot of how bad Spider-Man 3 is because of how good Thomas Hayden Church is as Sandman.
Dude, Sandman, legitimately, if they would have just stuck with Sandman, that movie could have had like this villain tragedy thing like really going for it.
The best scene in the whole movie is when Sandman gets transformed into Sandman for the first time, and he more or less has to rebuild himself. And he has the little locket of his daughter that serves as his motivation to both emotionally and physically pull himself back together.
He is definitely one of my favorite things about that. To me, the only redeemable thing about that movie.
Also, most comic accurate suit you could possibly get.
Like as far as Sandman, or
yeah.
There's
but
no
also,
way you could get even better than that.
Sandman's not the only good thing about that. J. Jonah Jameson has some great scenes.
Well, it's J.K. Simmons though. Like
Spider-Man 3 is the movie that has the heart medication scene.
That's
you know what I'm talking about? Of, Mr. Jameson, your wife says to take your pill. Thank you. Rings the buzzer, like shakes his whole desk. Keeps doing it over and over again.
It's the best. I really need more J.K. Simmons in my life, especially after watching Whiplash. I need to see him in more things.
Yeah, I wish we could see him more as Commissioner Gordon, but I think he's done there too.
Which I don't blame him after I don't have an appropriate word to say on this podcast to say what that was.
For Justice League?
Yes.
Missed opportunity. We'll go with that.
I guess I can just say cluster.
Yeah. Spider-Man 3 is also a cluster, but I'm becoming more a defender of it because it's not as bad as people make it out to be. It's just one or two things that were more or less out of the director's control, and the studio more or less made him do. Venom.
Yeah.
But even then, with Venom, there's ways that you could have made it work.
Yes.
Harry.
Yes. There's ways that I mean, hindsight is always 20/20.
Yeah.
So that's tough.
It's easier to armchair book years after.
Yeah, exactly.
So next up, number 5, I have Amazing Spider-Man, the first one.
Yeah, fair enough.
So for me, with Amazing Spider-Man, it's good. I don't think time has been necessarily too kind to this movie, because the more I step back at it, because when this movie came out, I didn't realize at the time, because I was just a naive Spider-Man fan. I thought it was great. I thought it was wonderful. Apparently, this movie was not really well received either when it came out. It was like 65-35 in terms of likes to dislikes. Like, it wasn't universally praised like the Tobey Maguire movies. I thought everyone loved it. I was like, yeah, this is really good. This is closer to the Spider-Man than I know and love. Throughout the years, I liked this movie less and less because Peter's a jerk. He's not a good person at all.
No,
And it gets kind of hard to root for him. Also, I never, even when I was younger, I never once for a second bought him as Peter Parker. I thought he's a better Spider-Man than Tobey Maguire, but Tobey Maguire's a much better Peter Parker. I don't buy Andrew Garfield as a nerd. He doesn't strike me as awkward. He talks to all the really attractive girls in the school.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's not my number 5. Number 5 is the first Spider-Man for me.
The Tobey Maguire one?
Yes.
Okay.
And part
Actually,
of that
that's flipped for me. That's my next one, so we can kind of lump these together.
Yeah, because it has not held up well.
Rewatching it, no, you are absolutely right. It has not aged well, but I will credit to, this was before, this was post, no, this movie was pre-Dark Knight, the movie that more or less changed superhero movies to be more serious in their tone. This was 2002. This is very early on in superhero movies in terms of the new age.
Still very early on in CGI, and
oh yes, it shows.
It does show.
It has not aged well.
No, it has not, and I personally have, and I don't think I've ever been quiet about this. I've never really, and I think it's the theme here. I've never bought Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man, which is rough because for me, I think the bond that in Amazing Spider-Man that is built between Peter and Dr. Connors, and then when he eventually turns, I think that's really devastating to me because I felt that more than when Peter found out that Mr. Osborn is Green Goblin, I guess.
Really? Yeah, I definitely would disagree with that, primarily just because I wasn't a huge fan of Reese Ifans as the Lizard, but
Fair.
I kind of agree with you in the sense of when I was growing up, I didn't see any of the Spider-Man movies except for Spider-Man 3 in the theaters, just because I grew up in a home of I didn't see PG-13 movies until I was 13, which, yeah, I'm totally fine with that. So I saw these movies late, but I still was aware of these movies. I had the Lunchable lithograph cards. Yep.
Yeah.
For Spider-Man 2. But even as a comic book fan, I was like, all right, here's my comic book Spider-Man. And then there's the movie Spider-Man. They're a little different, but I always knew Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man. But maybe because I came late, I was just like, he is a version of Spider-Man, as opposed to something I'll talk about later when it's just that's the Spider-Man I know and love. The Tobey Maguire one is just fine. There's some choices aesthetically that still to this day I scratch my head at with Amazing Spider-Man. Most specifically the Green Goblin.
Yeah.
What is that?
The big thing for me in Amazing Spider-Man, the reason I think I felt I got more behind the Lizard, reveal or whatever, was because Connors for Peter in a lot of ways was his last kind of hold on his Uncle Ben, his family. It was the last connection to those people, living connection to those people outside of May. Whereas I never felt like Peter and Dr. Osborn were close. You know what I mean? It always felt like, oh, that's my best friend's dad kind of thing.
Yeah, unlike a certain character I'm sure we'll talk about later.
Yes.
I will say, in the favor of Spider-Man, the Tobey Maguire one, no Spider-Man fight to date has gotten nearly as close to the brutality and the sheer uncomfortable level of violence of that first Spider-Man Goblin fight at the end.
Yes.
The sound design for that is unparalleled. There's no score whatsoever. You feel every hit. It is very violent for 2002.
It was.
Peter gets real messed up.
He
Not
does.
just that,
and I think
then Goblin getting impaled and everything. It's a brutal fight.
it is. I think a lot of, and the acting is, first of all, I think the one thing for me that Spider-Man does have going for it is William Dafoe. William Dafoe is one of my favorite actors, and he in that final scene, like he is acting his butt off, and which says a lot because he's got a mask on.
Yeah, which he's actually scarier without the mask.
Oh yeah, and I don't know how that's possible, but it's William Dafoe.
Just Willem Dafoe.
Yeah, the man's terrifying.
Although I think I was more afraid of him in Grand Budapest Hotel.
Also true, but still.
Yeah, we'll come back to Amazing Spider-Man more in detail, because I know it'll be later on your list, and so we'll kind of double back on that, and I'll kind of give more of the positives that I have for it, because I do have some positives. Yeah. There's one element in particular that I'm really excited to talk about for Amazing Spider-Man when we get there that I still think is actually the best element of any of the different incarnations that we've gotten of it. Yes. We've gotten 3 different versions of a specific aspect, but I think Amazing Spider-Man actually does it best. So I'll let you think about that for a little bit until we get back to it. So I did Amazing Spider-Man. And my number 4 is the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. What's your number 4?
Number 4 I think is gonna be Spider-Man 2.
Really?
Honestly. Yes. And part of that is it's good. Don't get me wrong. It's good. So I grew up reading The Ultimate Spider-Man, which is what the Amazing Spider-Man movie is based off of. I know, but at the same time, like that's why I think I have such an attachment to the first one, is because it's like that's the Spider-Man I grew up reading about, was the Ultimate Spider-Man. Now that being said, I haven't seen, part of it is I haven't seen 2 in a long time. So that might change, but I remember not liking Doc.
How dare you?
I know.
Doc Ock is still my favorite Spider-Man villain that we've gotten to date so far. More than Vulture.
I mean, I guess I don't know,
just because
man.
Alfred Molina gives a really great performance, you can tell Sam Raimi wanted to do this villain as opposed to Venom. There's some really great horror aspects to Doc Ock, especially that hospital room. You could just tell was done by a horror director. But the effects on Doc Ock's tentacles still hold up incredibly well to this day. And actually, that ties perfectly in. Spider-Man 2 is my number 3. And it was my number 1 for a lot of years until the past 3 or 4 years when we've had some real bangers of Spider-Man movies come out. Doc Ock to me is like the best thing about Spider-Man 2 and why it's so high on the list. That Aunt May's pep talk to Tobey Maguire of just, he wonders where Spider-Man's been.
Isn't 2 also the one where he like loses his powers?
I should know this because I just watched it. I believe so. Yeah.
All right. I was never down with that ever. Like, that doesn't make sense to me at all.
Even though it's happened numerous times in the comics?
I mean, it doesn't, but that doesn't mean it makes sense. He
loses his powers all the time.
No. Okay, listen. In 2, it doesn't, like, legitimately, their reason was he mentally wasn't sure that he wanted to be Spider-Man anymore, so his powers just stopped.
Which, I suppose that's fair, but in a sense, he has quit being Spider-Man. There's that famous panel that they even recreated in Spider-Man 2 of Spider-Man No More, where he leaves his suit in the trash. But to be fair to you, actually, Spider-Man has lost his powers a couple times, but typically it's when he's sick or He's got something
Exactly.
like physically wrong with him, not a mental state of. There's several comics that I've read that Spider-Man gets sick and he gets his butt handed to him, but then he's like better the next day and he gets his powers back.
Exactly. Like, there's always been a reason, not like, man, I don't want to be Spider-Man anymore, and his powers are just like, all right, cool, peace. Like that to me, like if you have this radiation or this spider bite or whatever you want to call it that has literally physically changed your DNA down to the every atom. How does that just go away because your brain doesn't want to do it anymore?
Also, quick side tangent. My biggest grumble that I've always had about the Tobey Maguires is, why does the webbing come from him?
Why does it? That has always been my issue with, and it's always the reason I couldn't get.
You know who to
behind.
blame for that, right?
Who?
James Cameron.
Really?
James Cameron was really close to making a live-action Spider-Man starring Leonardo DiCaprio at one point. Sam Raimi liked that idea of an organic web shooters from James Cameron and kept that for the movie.
That's dumb. It's dumb.
I always hated that because as someone that grew up reading comics, it was just like, no, he runs out of web fluid all the time. It's a common issue that he has. Here, it makes no sense why he would run out.
Exactly. Unless you're going to make it like a Flash thing or like, I need to eat in order to make webbing. Like, no. But then, because if that's the case, why doesn't it come out his butt? Like, is that not a thing that happens? Get out of here. I think it is my biggest gripe, and it's one of the reasons why I do put Amazing Spider-Man over 2. Because of to me, the emotional connection works a little bit better.
So is that your number 3? Is Amazing Spider-Man?
Yes, it is. And I have a feeling that I have a feeling that we have the exact same 1 and 2.
I don't know, man.
We'll see.
They'll be there, but they might just be flipped.
They might be. We'll see. But I personally enjoy Amazing Spider-Man a little bit more because of the attention to detail on some of the little aspects.
Which is weird to me that they get certain little aspects right, but then they botch like the bigger picture, like story.
Yeah. I mean, I
like enjoy we have him building his own webs again.
Yes,
but then you have real weird storytelling choices.
Yeah, and I enjoyed. I thought it was really smart that the Lizard has changed himself into this. It makes sense that he would also know how to do that to other people, and so. I mean, that to me that was a fresh take on Lizard that I don't think I've ever seen anywhere else. But I also, since we were talking about the webbing, just watching him web things in the movie and swinging makes more sense in the Amazing Spider-Man. The way that the physics work and the way that they shoot it all makes more sense than I think it had up until that point. Like when he's swinging down the bridge towards like early on in the movie when he figures out actually how to swing. You can see him shoot the web, and then when he lets go, it doesn't just hang there. It all springs back into the point where he shot it, so it stays there. So because everyone's all complaining about Spider-Man has always been, well, why isn't there, just webbing just hanging everywhere?
Because it dissolves after 30 minutes.
Yes, there's that, and it's like shooting something and swinging on a bungee. Like that's what it is. And the physics that they shot it with in Amazing Spider-Man, I really appreciated and thought it was a nice little touch.
At least for the first one, I thought the dynamic between Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone was really, really good, actually. It went way overboard in the second one, but...
Yeah, it felt like a natural, awkward connection.
Now, this may surprise you, but that thing that I mentioned earlier, that element that I think Amazing Spider-Man does better than any of the incarnations, so including Holland, Garfield, and Maguire, all three incarnations had this element, but I think Amazing Spider-Man does it best. Flash Thompson.
Yes.
I think Amazing Spider-Man's Flash Thompson is by and large the best Flash Thompson we've ever gotten. So basically the Tobey Maguire one is like your generic high school bully. he's Deathstroke, which I think is just great. And don't get me wrong, I like the new Flash Thompson, actually. I was initially not sold on it because he's just a pipsqueak, but he's just that arrogant rich guy that everyone hates, but they can't do anything about, which is more in line with modern bullies.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Amazing Spider-Man, I really like this Flash because it's closer to the Flash comics that I knew of just being a jerk, but having a love affair with Spider-Man. But they do something interesting with Flash that I was not expecting of. Like one of my favorite scenes in Amazing Spider-Man is after Uncle Ben dies, Flash comes up to Peter.
Yes.
And he tries to talk to him, and Peter just slams him into a locker. And Flash is like, the rage feels good, doesn't it? Makes the pain go away a little bit. Of just like, in that moment, you understand. And Flash is like trying to be there for Peter because he knows how much Uncle Ben meant to him. And I was like, that is something I would like to see more of. To the point of at the end of Amazing Spider-Man, you see him in the Spider-Man shirt. I was like, that's Flash Thompson right there. Of hates Peter, eventually becomes one of his best friends, but loves Spider-Man. So if we could get the Amazing version of Flash Thompson in the Tom Holland ones, I think that'd be a perfect combo of having him bully Tom Holland, but then be a huge fan of Spider-Man.
So tell me, I'm curious as to your opinion because it's I think personally my favorite iteration, but how do you feel about how they handle Uncle Ben?
It's got to be the Tobey Maguire.
Really? Okay.
Rewatching them, they're both good in their own way, but just the presence of Cliff Robertson in the original one is so much better. They spend more time with them.
Okay, fair enough.
They don't really spend as much time as they should with Andrew Garfield and I think it's Martin Sheen. It's A. Sheen. I think it's Martin Sheen.
Yeah,
they don't spend as much time because we know as an audience that he's going to die. So I feel like they don't spend as much time as they should. They're just like, he's going to die. Also, we don't get as much of that good fatherly wisdom until after he's dead. So there's a couple scenes of him that's just like, eh. And it's revealed afterwards. Whereas the Cliff Robertson one, he's got a couple really good moments, especially in those first two, of just giving Peter great advice and just being that great, loving kind of grandfather figure, but being the uncle, essentially.
Yeah. I will say that I enjoyed, I think, the dynamic between May and Ben a little bit better in Amazing Spider-Man. I felt like that was like a fun place to grow up kind of thing. And I think the thing that I have found funny is that, as we've gotten through the years with having different iterations of Spider-Man,
May gets younger.
May and Ben have gotten younger and younger.
I will say, original trilogy, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man has the best Aunt May still.
I'm going to disagree with you on that one.
You're going to say Amazing, aren't you?
I am. And I
she
think
doesn't do anything.
Listen, so let's think about this. Just follow my train of thought here, okay? If they were to take the game that they made and made it into of Spider-Man and made it into a movie, who could you see playing Aunt May in that game or that movie?
Probably the same actress.
To me, it's the lady that played May, and whose name is escaping my brain at this moment.
Sally Fields.
Sally Fields. There it is. To me, it's Sally Fields. I for some reason I felt that like this is a good woman who has good intentions and she loves Peter, and she feels like a good role model for Peter, not just like I'm a mother figure for you. Like what
I think it's coming down to, and this is just becoming more and more apparent. We kind of just grew up with different styles of Spider-Man of what we latch onto emotionally. My Aunt May is definitely more that classic Steve Ditko, Stan Lee era, and I'll go more into that later. Whereas yours is more Ultimate's Aunt May, who's more active, still works at the Daily. Is it still she works at the Daily Bugle, or she still is working type of thing?
Yeah, but like the big thing I got attached to was she's still working in the community as a nurse, and that's by the second one. But she's always giving back to the community, and she was a character that Peter could look up to as someone like, hey, this neighborhood is where we live. We better take care of the people that are in it. And to me, that is something that Spider-Man is all about. Like, that's why, like, I don't really mind if he goes outside of New York, but my favorite stories are when he is in New York, because he's got this very like, no, this is my city and I'm going to take care of everybody that I can that's in it.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because for a while there, it seems like I'm the only one that kind of has an issue with it. I think I'd be more excited about Far From Home if it wasn't set in Europe. I think that's my biggest hang up with it right now is I'm like, all right, I'm on board with Mysterio. I like seeing the elementals. They look cool. But Spider-Man is like, he is New York. It's like having a Batman movie set in London. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. It's weird. It is weird. And you know, maybe
the fact
they'll
he's not in the red
sell
and blue.
us. Yeah, maybe they'll sell us on it, but whatever.
I know. I actually already do know why he's wearing the different suits. And it makes sense from a storytelling perspective, but the movie has to end with him in the red and blue. That's all I'm saying.
Exactly. Like, it has to be a different suit than the one he's had.
Oh, I really think it will. But to get back on track, any closing thoughts on Amazing Spider-Man 2 before we get down to our final two?
Not really. I think you and I have kind of said everything there is to say for you and I to say about that move about it.
Yeah, if not in this episode, I know we've talked about it ad nauseum in previous episodes.
Yeah, I appreciate.
I feel like it's the one thing more than any other that we will always disagree and butt heads on.
Yeah, because and like you said earlier, it really comes down to we grew up with different Spider-Mans.
Yes, Spider-Man has had a lot of different incarnations, like radically different incarnations.
And there's nothing wrong with that at all either.
Yeah, some are radically different. Case in point, my number 2, Into the Spider-Verse.
Really? Okay.
I told you they'd be flipped, man.
Interesting.
It took me a while to really narrow down. I was like, Spider-Man 2, Homecoming, Into the Spider-Verse. One of them has to make the cut. So, Into the Spider-Verse, I love this movie. And not just because Nicolas Cage is in it, but that helps. Nicolas Cage, John Mulaney. It's
is it Jeff Johnson?
Jake Johnson.
Jake Johnson, there it is. He plays he's Nick from
Chris Pine too.
Yeah. There's a lot of really big names in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Into the Spider-Verse, I had pretty low expectations for just because I thought weird and animated Spider-Man movie while we have Spider-Man movies going. Also, full admission here, I've never cared about the character of Miles Morales. However, 2018 did a really good number on him of, okay, I really liked him in the Spider-Verse. I really liked him in the Spider-Man game. I'm starting to become a Miles Morales fan. But Into the Spider-Verse absolutely blew me away.
Yeah,
This is your number one, isn't it?
It's totally my number one. And I think it goes back to what the theme of our discussion has kind of been, is that we grew up with different Spider-Mans, but it hit all the notes for me.
This personally. One though, I would argue against your point, just because this Spider-Man, more than any other Spider-Mans, more than the Holland or the Tobey Maguire or even the Garfield, this doesn't feel like it belongs to an era. It feels like all the eras of Spider-Man, but it feels the most like the 90s cartoon, actually.
I'll give you that. And I personally, like, for some reason, and I could probably pin it if I wanted to really, like, sat down and watched it again, because I've only seen it once, so I would love to watch it a couple more times. But the journey that Miles goes through, along with the journey that Peter from the other Earth goes through, I think hit more emotional notes and really like I just resonated more than the stuff that went on with Homecoming.
Also, I remember being very critical about it before the movie came out, but the animation style of Into the Spider-Verse, it's so hard to do anything new nowadays in movies, but I felt like when I was watching Into the Spider-Verse, I felt like I was watching something new. I had not seen that style before, but it really
Yeah,
worked. I've never seen a movie feel more like a comic than I did with Into the Spider-Verse. It was literally a living comic. Not an
it really
adaptation of a
did.
comic, but a living comic itself.
And that's what I think I appreciate the most about it is it felt like it legitimately felt outside of character designs, outside of voice acting, it felt like a comic come to life.
And also, as a person that's been reading comics forever, I like that it pulled some fast ones of like, I thought I knew where it was going to go. Like, going into the movie, I was like, all right, Miles' dad is going to bite it, or one of his parents is going to bite it. That's just superhero logic. In the comics, his dad dies.
Mm-hmm.
It's not him that bites it. So when that character that does die dies, I was like, oh, that was a nice twist.
Yeah, it was, and it does come at you don't have a lot of time to register. Um, like, oh no, I know where this is going. Like they kind of make a reveal, and then you go, oh man, that really sucks, and
And
then
then
stuff
quick
happens,
death,
and
because
then you're
not
like,
all deaths have to be
oh
drawn out. He was
yeah,
gone.
it was, and but they did a good job of setting up that character first, of showing why he was so close to him.
Yes. And then for a movie called Into the Spider-Verse, they actually don't focus on the Spider-Verse nearly as much as I was expecting. Um, I want more of the rest of the Spider-Verse in a sequel, which I'm sure is coming, which I'll give my story pitch for that in a little bit here. I really like the supporting characters. Like I said, Nicolas Cage as Spider-Man Noir, great. I'm so happy for Nicolas Cage that he got to be Spider-Man and Superman in the same calendar year.
Yes,
And
look,
John
I think,
Mulaney as Spider-Ham. As
oh,
someone that actually has read Spider-Ham comics, he was perfect.
I think the thing I've appreciated also about it is that you can tell that they're all from different universes. They interact with reality differently. Like
Yes.
Spider-Ham
How
is
is his cape
actually
blowing?
floating.
We're inside.
Exactly. And like whatever her name is, I can't remember, just the anime Spider-Man, like the way that she's drawn and the way that she interacts with the world is different as well. Like it every character was drawn in a very specific way, and it was obviously different than the world that you were in. It was just very, very smart and well done, and I think the attention to detail was incredible.
Oh, absolutely. I love Into the Spider-Verse, and I fully expect there to be a sequel. It didn't do huge numbers, but it since it was an animated movie, it was easier to make its budget back.
Yeah.
Also, Into the Spider-Verse has one of the best end credits ever,
Yes.
which I was begging for that character to show up in the movie. So when he didn't, I was like, oh, that's disappointing. Then he shows up in the end credits, voiced by Oscar Isaac of all people.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, yes, please. So I said earlier for my story pitch for Into the Spider-Verse 2, I want that character kind of like Shattered Dimensions type of go back in time to Miles and be like, we got to fix the future, my future. So we need all the Spider-Mans to save our reality, our future reality.
Yeah. It could be really, really cool, man. I think at the end of the day, and you and I can sit here and we're going to sit here and talk about Homecoming in a second.
Yeah, we
But
are.
um, I just I think the running theme of what it means to be Spider-Man, that the journey that Miles goes on that throughout the film, um, I think that was something I hadn't seen put that way ever. Of it's not just about being good to the neighborhood. It's not just about defeating villains. It's not about being a good person. It's about getting it back up every single time, no matter what.
Yeah, it was just really, really well done. That whole message, though, I could echo for Homecoming big time. And as you can figure it out by now, my number one, and I'm assuming Josh's number two,
Yep.
favorite Spider-Man movies, Spider-Man Homecoming. It wasn't initially. I loved it when I first saw it. An honorable mention to Spider-Man's appearance in Civil War. That really got me on the Spider-Man train. But Spider-Man Homecoming, it was the Spider-Man I never knew I was missing, but then I got it and I don't want anything else because
Yeah.
it was the Spider-Man, and Josh and I have been saying all episode, it's the Spider-Man I grew up on. I had a lot of the classic like omnibuses of the original Spider-Man stuff. I probably had like the first 100 issues of classic Spider-Man in like a black and white omnibus. I grew up with the old like 60s and 70s Spider-Man, the Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, very clean-cut, do-gooder Spider-Man nerd type character. I grew up on that and the 90s cartoon. So to me, Tom Holland was a perfect representation of that original Spider-Man. Of Tom Holland, he's a good-looking dude, but he's not Andrew Garfield. He's not cover of a magazine. He's normal. He's not unattractive, but he's a normal face in the crowd. And I love that that's an aspect of Peter Parker because he's a normal, everyday kid. He's relatable. You see yourself as that character. But also, more than any other Spider-Man, he's just fun to be around. A big part of Spider-Man's arsenal that's been missing for years is fun. When he is Spider-Man, he makes jokes with the bad guys. My favorite line in the Far From Home trailer is when he webs everybody up. He's like, so you going to be the new Iron Man? How am I going to do that? I'm too busy doing your job. But when he says it, that's the big difference between him and Andrew Garfield for me. If Andrew Garfield tried it, when he tried it, he came across like a jerk. When he like webbed up the cop's gun, he's like, I just did half your job for you type of thing. When Peter jokes with cops, he's saying it as like a coworker as opposed to I'm doing your work for you type of thing. My thing with Tom Holland is he's just a good kid, but there's still that stark difference of he's just Stark difference. Well, there's no Stark anymore. Spoiler alert. There's a couple big defining moments that right off the bat, I knew the people making Homecoming knew Spider-Man and knew what to do with him. And the first, it was one I don't talk about as much as the second one, obviously. The first one is when he is going to the party and he promised everyone, hey, Spider-Man will show up. And he's about to get his costume on. Then he sees some trouble off in the distance. And he has to decide in that moment, do I investigate what that loud explosion was? Or do I seek the fame and glory? And then he decides to go after the explosion. It's just little decisions like that are why I love Spider-Man. It's that decision to be good all the time. And the core concept of Spider-Man of choosing between what's right and your own personal happiness, which just seems to be a theme that's growing even more for Far From Home. That's key to the character of Peter Parker, of balancing his responsibilities and balancing his schoolwork and wanting to be the hero. I love that the Spider-Man that we get in Far From Home isn't the fully realized Spider-Man yet. Of just like, mission, give me all the missions. I want to help out. And you're like, you're not yet ready, but his heart's in the right place. He webs up the innocent person's bike. He stops the guy from getting into his own car. It's the Peter Parker I always wanted, and the scene that I always go back to, because when it happened in the theater, I was like, oh, is this the thing that I've wanted? And that's when the building falls on him, and he's just crushed. Because in that moment, it's not Spider-Man, it's Peter Parker. And in that moment, you're like, he's not a hero. He's a 15-year-old boy who's scared and afraid and thinks he's going to die. And thank goodness we didn't have the with great power comes great responsibility line coming from Tony Stark, but we had the, if you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have it, which almost gives a reason for Iron Man 3 to actually exist. but he has that great moment where he lifts the rubble, which that to me is the core of Spider-Man, of never giving up, because that's ripped right out of a comic. When Aunt May's in the hospital and Peter's trapped under a big machine that Doc Ock dropped on him. I think it was Doc Ock dropped on him. And he has to more or less, he spends like the whole issue under this rubble and has to decide if he's going to find the strength within himself to lift himself up. I could just rave on and on about Homecoming, from the suit. I think Homecoming suit's the best. I do have some issues with Karen as an AI, but I will reserve judgment because I think that's part of the long-term story that is going to play even more into Far From Home. Of, he keeps saying it in the trailers, the world needs a new Iron Man. No, we need a Spider-Man. Of, you can't be Iron Man Jr., which is part of my few gripes that I have with Homecoming, is that he feels too much like Iron Man Jr. at times. But it's the training wheels protocol in more ways than one. Of, he needs to learn to be Spider-Man.
Yeah, I will say Homecoming is a really, really, really close second.
It's just Into Spider-Verse is really good too.
That's the thing. And I think, if anything, I think you and I would agree that these movies are tied really for first. They're two of the currently the best Spider-Man movies we've ever had.
Yes, and it seems like this Spider-Man is not going away anytime soon. There's rumors that I read that Marvel would like 9 Spider-Man movies, 3 separate trilogies.
Okay.
High school,
nice.
College, adult.
Yeah, no, I'm down. And Holland's a perfect age to do something like that. So
yeah, he's made for long term, because he's not even like 25 yet.
Yeah, exactly. So it would totally work. And I mean, this movie gave us one thing I never thought we'd ever get, and that's the web wings.
I remember that. So, like a week before Homecoming, the first Homecoming trailer came out, I made a wish list video on the main YouTube channel of just like stuff I would like to see in a Spider-Man movie someday. Like a Venom Carnage triple threat match with Spider-Man, Sinister Six. I actually said in the original version of the video, web wings. But then I cut it out because I was like, that's a little too unbelievable. I don't think that'll actually happen. And then I kicked myself when the trailer dropped next week with him web winging off the Washington Monument. I was like, dang it.
It really is I never thought that A, that we would get it, or B, that it would make sense.
I felt the same way at the end of Civil War with the spider signal. I don't think I've ever cheered louder at a post-credit scene in my entire life than the spider signal. Because that's an element from the comics that I was always like, that's too hokey to put in a movie. So when he flashes on the ceiling, I lost it. Of, okay, this is a new Spider-Man. And nowadays, I feel like nothing's off limits with Spider-Man, really, in terms of, yeah, maybe someday we will get a Kraven the Hunter. Maybe we will get a good symbiote movie with a better symbiote suit. We probably will get a Sinister Six.
Yeah, like everything, actually, like the sky feels like the limit. I mean, they did it already by using Vulture as their kind of like debut villain. So
yeah, if we can make Vulture work, we can make anything work. Mysterio seems to really be working. Early buzz is Mysterio's great. So I am excited about the future of Spider-Man. And with Tom Holland more than any other, it's just, Spider-Man was a huge part of my childhood growing up. He will always be, even more than Batman or Nightwing, Spider-Man will be the one that is closest to my heart. So seeing something that special to me with Tom Holland Spider-Man is just so cool to see. And I just really appreciate the MCU for what they've more or less have saved Spider-Man from a lot of mishandling.
They really have. And it could have been a lot worse. But I mean, that's the thing, though. And I think one of my favorite scenes, and I think we've talked about this before, is the scene where he finds out the girl he's taking to the dance, his dad, is played by Vulture.
Which also, as a comic book fan, never saw that coming, but I was okay with the change because it was great in the moment.
It was fantastic. It made you actually like,
uh-oh.
Well, and part of it too is you kind of realize like that these guys that are doing terrible things also have families, and there's a chance that their families have no idea what's going on.
Yeah. Anything else you got to throw out there, or else I'm good to bring it
No,
home?
not really. I think we've kind of talked about all of the movies pretty well at length, and I think it's, even if we didn't number them off, I think it's fairly obvious which ones we really enjoy and which ones we do not. If you obviously, I'm always going to recommend anybody find the Drake Bell show if you can, and watch it. It's fantastic, especially the first couple seasons. And if you haven't played the game yet, by all means, like, play it all the way through.
If nothing else, just watch the video. I'll leave you with this last question, then we'll wrap it up, Josh. I always like the stories when Spider-Man worked together with other people, like the team-up issues. In future movies, is there any particular pairing or team-up that you would like to see Spider-Man do?
I think I would enjoy, especially with Peter and Mary Jane getting closer, I think I would enjoy introducing Black Cat. Not as a romantic yet, but just as someone to cause some tension. I think
Whenever he gets introduced, I'm going Human Torch.
Yeah, I was going to say Human Torch. I think that would be fun. It would be interesting how they would swing a Deadpool Spider-Man team up. I would be interested in it, but not as Spider-Man has to be rated R.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the direction that it needs to go.
Kind of an out of left field pick, but they have interactions already. Spider-Man and Doctor Strange.
I'd be down. Part of me would be down for Spider-Man to team up with Falcon and Bucky.
Yeah, that'd be cool, because he first interacted with them. I like weirder Spider-Man stories of, like, things that are kind of out of the norm at times. So I think Doctor Strange could be a really cool fit. But Human Torch, they're buddies. That's always going to be the top of my list. And I still think Spider-Man is your backdoor in the Fantastic Four.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially if they finish this trilogy as him in high school, and they introduce Human Torch as his buddy when he's in college. That age is, I think, better for Human Torch than something older or younger.
Yeah. Calling it now. Next Spider-Man is called Spider-Man Graduation.
Yeah, totally.
Well, I think that'll about do it for us this week. What are your favorite Spider-Man movies? How would you rank them? Are you more of a Maguire person? Are you more of a Holland person? Or you like Josh and you're more of a Garfield person? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, if you like what you hear and you want to hear more, subscribe to us on whatever audio platform you're listening to us on, whether that's Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, or on YouTube. And if you haven't already, subscribe to us on YouTube at Uncharted Media. And as always, stay sharp, movie guys and gals.